Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide. It's Monday. Today is the first Monday I'm back from kind of a staycation.
Yay.
Which,
so she's nice and relaxed.
Also, it's never an easy landing. Just going to say that when you come back from doing less work.
It's 100% true. Yeah.
But, hey, what you going to do?
You still need to take a break.
Yeah. Right? It's one of the benefits of recording ahead of time that I know that this will be released on that date. And, not so much looking forward to the backlog of emails and all, but we all need a break sometimes.
You need a break. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, we do. Maybe we'll talk today during this topic about cutting some people a break. How about that?
It's a good segue.
Thanks. I work so hard on these segues.
I know.
By the way, before we really get into the topic, stay with us because we have another Feedback 5 at the end of this episode, and maybe it will be your feedback.
It might be. You won't know unless you listen. Yeah.
We started the Feedback 5 in the last episode. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, you know what you have to do? You have to go back to episode before this one and listen.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're here today to talk about if families are responsible for their children's behavior. Something that we've touched upon, I think, in the past. And I talk to people a lot about because I am continually surprised in this generation how many of my college students, when asked, say, yes, the family is absolutely responsible for their children's behavior. And we have to have a discussion about the fact that children behave differently in different places and children start to make independent decisions when they are not with their families. And sometimes those decisions aren't great, but that's how they learn.
Right.
So
how are they going to learn? Yeah.
Right. So I know we've mentioned this in the past. I just want to kind of frame today's discussion around the fact that children, when they leave their families, behave differently in different places and with different people. And they are always looking for their power. Where is my power in this place? What are my boundaries of power? And so they do exhibit challenging behavior sometimes when they're not with their families, that very often when their families hear about it, they're like appalled because the families will say things like, my child should know that isn't okay. Yeah, but they're in a different place with different people.
Yeah, but I have a thing against that, like they should know better kind of thing. It's like, but they're kids and they don't know better. They're still learning about it. So like, it's
a process.
It's a process. Yeah.
So the question, are families responsible for the behavior of their children? If it were me, I would ordinarily say, no, children are going to make decisions. They're not always going to be in keeping with what they were taught or what was modeled for them at home because this is a different setting. Also, there's different people here annoying them in different ways. And we don't know what's happening at home, but I'm going to say as a parent, I'm going to tell you that sometimes my kids made decisions and I was like, what were you thinking? Right? That was when they were older. I would never say that to a younger child because you know what they're thinking? They don't have the thought process yet. That's what they're thinking. So
they don't know. They really don't know better. Yeah.
So, okay. If I'm going to go with, no, families are not responsible for the behavioral decisions that their children make when they're not with them. I need to add something to that. Here's what I think families are responsible for. Their reaction to behavior that is dangerous, against the rules, unacceptable in any way.
Hurts other people.
Hurts people physically or emotionally. How does the family respond to the news that their child has done something that crossed those boundaries in the setting they were in? So you may have a different boundary at home and you can do that. What your children need to learn is, okay, your teacher has this boundary. We're going to respect that rule.
Right.
Even though we may do differently at home, this is what you are expected to do in that classroom.
At school. Yeah.
Right. So part of a family's reaction needs to be, first, taking it seriously.
Yeah.
Just gonna put that statement out there.
Put that out there. Yeah.
If
take it
someone
seriously.
comes to you and says, here's what has happened, here's why that's a problem, first you need to take it seriously.
Yeah.
This is a real conversation people are having with you. And the people having it with you are probably concerned for the big picture of everyone's health, safety, and mental well-being.
If they weren't concerned, they wouldn't have brought it up. Yeah.
Right.
So
they're bringing it up. So when a family takes it seriously, and many do, great. The conversation and the reaction you have with your children after that, you are very responsible for, because what you're about to teach them is what happens when we exhibit behavior that is challenging or unacceptable in different settings. You're about to demonstrate for them what happens.
Yeah.
If we cover it up, sweep it under the rug, lie to cover it up,
lie about it. Yeah.
Any of those things, what have we taught the child?
Right. When you start making excuses for their behavior, that just teaches them like, oh, I can just get out of this by doing all those things. Lying, covering it up, sneaking around, ignoring it. That's what you're teaching them.
Yeah. What you're teaching them is, don't worry, you can do whatever you want wherever you are, because I'm going to bail you out. I'm going to get you out of it. I'm going to go in and or in some way cover for it, get you. You're not ever really going to be.
You're never fully responsible.
Paying consequences for anything.
Yeah.
You are not fully responsible for your decisions.
You're not fully responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's no reason, I don't think, to lie for a child. You know,
I agree with that. Like, I don't think that you should go against your moral code. And if your moral code says I'm not going to lie,
maybe it doesn't. Maybe your moral
maybe it
code
doesn't. I know that's
that.
that's where it's kind of tricky. Is like, if your moral code says don't lie, why would you then start lying just to cover up for your kid? But some people's moral code isn't that. That's where it gets a little.
Yeah, but here's the thing you
tricky.
have to know. Here's the thing you have to know. Bandura taught us the impact of modeling positive things and negative things. Bandura is a theorist.
Yeah.
Taught us whatever we do, children are modeled for, and they will probably do. So if I say to them, we're going to face this, they learn to face things. Yeah. If I say to them, don't worry, and then they see me tell a lie about it, you know what they learn? To lie when they make a mistake.
Right.
So why do people end up consistently lying about the actions they take? It may be what they learned from the modeling around them when they were young and made a mistake, that when you make a mistake, you lie about it.
Yeah. And that's going to go for like big mistakes and little mistakes. They're just going to lie. They just think that's what you do after you make a mistake, is you lie.
Yes. You are 100% better off saying nothing to anybody else. You know, if you're worried about the other parents or the grandparents or the neighbors, say nothing. But don't lie.
I feel like that's typically what's going on, is like the parents and families are so concerned about what other parents and families think about, because that's the society we live in now. It's like this big comparison all the time.
It is.
That it's sometimes they feel it's maybe easier, like, well, let me just lie so that the neighbors don't think of us like that. You know what I mean? But it's really like, should you be worried about what your neighbors think, or should you be worried about what this teaches your kid?
You know, that mistake that the child made, and it's a mistake. Yeah. That mistake that the child made is a family's teachable moment.
Yes. Yeah.
You have a choice. Is the child going to learn from this a good thing, or is the child a useful thing, or is the child going to learn from this that when the chips are down, it doesn't really matter because we can cover it up. We can sweep it under a rug. We can lie about it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So then what happens is they grow up and they make mistakes in their workplace and they lie about it and they try to cover it up and they do all the things that were demonstrated for them when they were kids.
Yeah.
I also go ahead. No, you go.
Oh, I also feel like when you're doing all this lying or covering up, you're shielding them from all those consequences. So they might not even see the consequences of their actions. And then they grow up and they make a mistake and nobody's there to cover it up that time. And they're like, but they might be making decisions based on like, but there's no consequences because it always gets shielded from me. So they don't even realize, like they don't even have the background information needed in order to make this decision. Because in a normal situation, you would be like, okay, I could do this and this will happen, or I could do this and this will happen. But if you've shielded them from the what's going to happen part, then they don't even know. They don't even have the information they need to make these decisions.
You can certainly impose consequences. There's two types of consequences that we've talked about when we talk about behavior. There's the natural consequences. Like if you're continually hitting the other children aren't going to want to play with you. That's what happens naturally, that's what happens. Right? Yeah. I don't even need to do anything about that because that's going to happen naturally. There's also logical consequences. Like you are out in a park with your child playing at the playground, the child hits somebody and the logical consequences, we're going home now.
We're going home. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there are logical consequences and natural consequences, and those are the types of consequences we want to hone in on. There's also no consequences. And that's
what I'm getting into is like, if there's no consequences, if they don't think there's ever any consequences to any action that they take, then they don't know what's at risk, when they make a decision.
Right. I just hope that if you're listening to this, if you are a professional, you think about that.
Yeah.
Actually, 3 things. Ready? Here's what you think about if you're a professional. Families really can't be held responsible for the behavior of their children in a different setting with different people, with all those kids around.
Yeah.
Also, as a professional, that we need to communicate with families about what their children do so that they can follow up. And finally, this point. I can't make anyone follow up. The families are going to go and they're going to do what they do. It doesn't matter what we think of what they do, because my job as a professional is to provide the information and any suggestions or tips if they want it.
Yeah.
And to let the family know what happened and how I handled it. That's the sum total of my responsibility. I am not responsible for however the families, whatever they do. Some of them will grab the teachable moment in a really good way. Some of them will not. So be it. We have to let that go as professionals.
Just gotta let it go.
Gotta let that go. I have done my job. If you are listening to this and you have children, and I think this applies to children of any age, when someone comes to you about your child's behavior, it's not a reflection of you or your parenting that your child made a decision that wasn't so great. You should, however, grab and figure out the teachable moment, model behavior for the children that will teach them that we can't just sweep things under the rug.
Yeah, that's not how life works.
I can't make things disappear for you.
Yeah.
I remember times with my boys when, and I'm sure I missed some of these teachable moments, but because we all do, by the way. Yeah, but I remember times with my boys when I would sit them down and say, do you understand what could happen if you do this? Yeah. If you do this, this can happen, this can happen, this can happen. Did you think about all that? Because you need to start thinking about what you're doing when you make these, right? When you do things.
And not just how it affects you, but how it affects other people or the situation that you're in. It's not just all about you. You have to teach them that. You have to show them that.
We have to literally teach them that. There's people around you who could get hurt. There are people around you, and we have to think about them. And, or for them, if it's about them, you know, I hope you know you could have gotten hurt. We don't want you to get hurt. These discussions have to take place, folks, when you are calm. Otherwise, it doesn't go well. If you need to take a beat before talking to them about it, you take a beat.
Then do so,
I have taken many a card ride home first before we talk about it, right?
Yeah.
So that I can kind of breathe and get my thoughts together and then go at that teachable moment in a productive way.
Right.
And it's always, I feel like as a parent, we're always in this situation where we're sending one of two messages to children. And we always want a message to be, I believe in you and I know you're capable.
Right.
Which means I'm going to teach you about this mistake.
Yeah.
Because I know you're capable of doing other things and making other decisions.
Yeah.
So I'm going to teach you about this mistake.
Right. And you're capable of learning about this mistake.
I'm going to teach you that there are logical consequences when things happen.
Yeah.
And by doing that, I'm going to teach you to think about your behavior.
Yeah.
Which I can't do if I am so worried about it as a reflection on me that I put it on a shelf in the closet and do nothing with it.
And never touch it ever again.
Yeah.
And then mistakes will be repeated because they never learn from it.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So we're going to go back to the original question. And the original question was, are families responsible for their children's behavior when they're not with them? And the answer is no. Families are responsible for grabbing teachable moments about the children's behavior when a child makes a decision that wasn't so great. And some people are listening and thinking, but parents are responsible for laying a foundation for their children, a certain moral foundation. And they are.
I agree with that.
That wasn't the question.
That's not the question.
It's not the question. The question is, once a child has done something that is not good for the people around them, for property, whatever it is, once the child has done something that was not a good decision, are the families responsible for that? They could have laid a wonderful foundation, been doing it in terrific ways, and the child just was checking something out and testing a little bit.
They still are going to make mistakes because they're learning.
That's right.
No matter what foundation you put down, they need to sometimes make that mistake. They need to discover this on their own. Even you could have really had a great moral foundation, and they still need to explore and make the mistakes and then learn from them.
Correct. All right. So that's our food for thought for this Monday.
There you go. Yeah.
But we have to do the feedback 5.
The feedback 5.
During which, in 5 minutes or less, I share feedback from our preschool peeps about previous episodes, about the topic of previous episodes. And Alison times me because I love to talk, and we promised 5. So here's the feedback 5 for this week.
All right, go.
All right. A couple of episodes ago, we talked about the real meaning of bravery. You may recall. You all can check out that episode. What is true bravery? Right? Mm-hmm. And we talked about, just very basically, but you really should listen to the episode, that sometimes or often bravery isn't giving into what other people want you to do. It's standing up for what your needs are, right? Or your safety, what gives you safety and psychological safety. One of the pieces of feedback that we got about that episode came from Sarah Foster. Hi, Sarah, and thank you for giving permission for us to talk about this. Sarah Foster sent a quote, and as soon as Alice and I read it, we were like, I love that. I think, though, the quote can be interpreted different ways. So I'm just going to tell you how I interpreted it. The quote says, bravery is not confronting my fears. It's confronting the fears of others.
I like that quote.
Here's how I related it to the episode. In the episode, we talk about the example of when the fire truck comes and a child is afraid. Yeah. And adults are like, come on, be brave. We have to go over to it, even though they're hesitant about strangers and loud noises and all that stuff. Yeah. Again, listen to the episode. So here's how I interpret it. Bravery for that child isn't as much confronting the child's own fears as having to confront the fears of the adults who think the child will be left out. The child should be a part of the group. There's something wrong here that the child doesn't want to go. So in that case, I interpret it as the fears of others being the lack of participation is the fear of the others.
That's a good way to interpret it.
So the child has to confront the teacher's fears by refusing to go. Go ahead.
I interpreted it more, I think, in the adult sense of other people may not always agree with the path that you want to be on. And that's their fears, right? So instead of confronting my fear of taking that path, which there might not even be any fear, or might just be a little bit of anxiety, you have to overcome all these other people's fears that they're going to try to lay on top of you and try to get you to not take that path because they don't necessarily agree with that path because they have their own fears, and you can't let other people's fears stop you from doing what you feel is the right path for you.
Kind of like that kid. It's kind of the same.
Kind of like that in a way.
Like that child who's like, no, I'm not going over there, and runs in the other direction.
Right.
That's the path the child wants to take. Doesn't want to take your path. Stop putting your perceptions on the child. Kind of the same.
Right. Totally, kind of the same way. Right? Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
So Sarah, that's how we've interpreted this quote. Yeah. And we really appreciate your sending it. I'm going to just read it one more time so that our listeners can, I don't know, jot it down, ponder it, because I do think it can be interpreted many different ways.
Yeah.
Bravery is not confronting my fears. It's confronting the fears of others. Love it. Thank you, Sarah.
Love it. Thank you.
Something I may share with my own children.
Yeah. Well, I like collect quotes. I like to write them down. And
Me too. I'm a big quote collector.
I have like a whole list in my phone.
Yeah.
And then like when I'm having a bad day, I like go through all my quotes.
I'm a big quote collector also.
Yeah, that'll be one that I add in so I can be brave one day when I need to be.
There you go. All right. How long did that take, Alison? Did we do it in 5?
Right. Yep, we have 1 minute and 6 seconds left.
This, folks, is my own Olympic sport. This is it.
This is it. Maybe one day it will be one.
I'm going to suggest to the Olympic Committee that discussing feedback from a podcast within 5 minutes should be an Olympic sport.
Yes. We could be the pioneers of it.
It's not as good as my husband's suggestion, though, Alison. I shared it with Alison.
Yeah, no, his is great.
My husband's suggestion for an Olympic sport was floating in a pool with a noodle. He's pretty sure he can win.
I think he could too.
Yeah. And with that, we leave you, preschool peeps, and thank you for the feedback. If you want to send us feedback to consider, send it. Facebook, our contact form on howpreschoolteachersdoit.com.
Yeah.
Send it on in, and maybe we'll say your name and acknowledge you. Yeah. Thank you so much for your feedback. Catch you next time on the podcast.
Bye, peeps.